Welcome to the channel. This video is part of our mission to help you grow, think, and live better. Imagine standing at the edge of a challenge you once thought impossible. Maybe shedding that extra weight, excelling in a career you've been stuck in, or overcoming personal hurdles that keep you awake at night. In Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins invites you to rethink what you believe you're capable of. At first glance, his story may look like a list of seemingly superhuman feats, becoming a Navy SEAL, competing in ultramarathons, and breaking world records for pull-ups. But beneath the dramatic achievements lies a roadmap for pushing yourself well beyond the mental barriers you've built over the years. If you're tired of playing small or feeling trapped by circumstances, this summary might just spark the change you need. By the end, you'll see how every excuse can be dismantled and replaced by a simple yet profound truth. You're stronger than you think, and you can prove it to yourself every single day. Goggins' childhood was marked by harsh realities. He grew up surrounded by racism, financial struggles, and physical abuse at home. Early on, he felt pigeonholed by labels, told he wasn't smart enough, athletic enough, or strong enough to amount to anything worthwhile. It would have been easy for him to accept that vision of himself, but he chose a different route. Instead of letting his trauma define him in the worst way, he started looking at it as a potential source of strength. He figured if he could endure the abuse, there had to be something unbreakable inside him. That spark, call it anger, motivation, or survival instinct, pushed him to see what else was possible, even if he had to begin with a complete overhaul of his lifestyle. By describing those early years, Goggins sets the stage for a journey that proves no matter where you start, you can reinvent yourself through discipline and relentless self-honesty. One of Goggins' earliest and perhaps simplest tools for transformation is his accountability mirror. It's a tactic that sounds almost too basic. Write down your shortcomings on Post-it notes, things like, "I'm out of shape," or "I procrastinate too much," and stick them to your mirror so you're forced to confront them every day. At first, this exercise can feel brutal. Who wants to stare at their flaws? But Goggins argues that facing them is precisely the point. You can't change what you're unwilling to acknowledge. When you see these notes daily, you strip away your usual excuses, and you either decide to improve or confirm you're comfortable staying exactly where you are. Over time, the accountability mirror stops being a wall of criticisms and becomes a visible testament to growth, with each weakness you've worked on transforming from a post-it of shame into a stepping stone toward your strongest self. Goggins also writes candidly about the moment he realized he needed to join the military to escape the dead-end cycle he was stuck in. He settled on joining the Air Force, but he didn't waltz in triumphantly. Overcoming obesity was his first mountain to climb. He was carrying around so much weight that making the weight limit alone felt like a nearly impossible task. But every day, he pushed, ran, and disciplined himself, chipping away at his self-defeating mindset. Eventually, he did lose the weight, passed the necessary tests, and found himself in a world that demanded a far deeper level of mental toughness than he'd ever known. Yet it was precisely in this environment, where nothing came easy, that he began honing the resilience that would define his life's story. Although Goggins accomplished quite a bit in the Air Force, he later decided he wanted a new, even tougher challenge, becoming a Navy SEAL. That dream required him to start from scratch again. He'd gained weight, lost his fitness edge, and knew that SEAL training was notorious for washing out even the most capable recruits. Still, he refused to let his body or mind stay at the status quo. The process of preparing for the rigors of Bud S, basic underwater demolition SEAL training, involved long hours of running, swimming, and weightlifting, all while cramming academic material into his nightly study sessions. He was brutal with himself, constantly reminding himself that nothing would change unless he accepted full responsibility for every choice, meal, and workout. When he finally arrived at Bud S, he came face-to-face with the infamous Hell Week, a multi-day trial of extreme physical and mental endurance, designed to weed out those who don't have an unshakable will. Goggins had to push through injuries, fractures, and severe exhaustion that left him on the edge of quitting more than once. What carried him through was a conviction that most of us give up far too early because we trust our minds when they say, "You're done," instead of challenging that impulse. This segues into his renowned 40% rule. According to Goggins, when your mind claims you've reached your limit, whether it's in a workout, a study session, or any tough situation, you've likely only used about 40% of your true capacity. If you force yourself to keep going just a bit further, you'll find reserves of strength you didn't realize you had. Over time, you teach your mind that it doesn't control you. You control it. The 40% rule is intimately connected to Goggins' philosophy of stepping into discomfort on purpose. After completing SEAL training, he could have stayed in his comfort zone, yet he felt a pull to push himself even further. That's how he ended up entering ultramarathons, distances of 50, 100, or even more miles that most people wouldn't dream of tackling. In one of the book's most dramatic episodes, he signs up for a 100-mile race on very short notice and without the extensive training that professional ultrarunners typically undergo. Naturally, his body protested violently. He ended up with bloody feet, intense pain, and a dangerously deteriorating state. But in enduring it, he discovered a kind of transformation that only arises from willingly stepping into suffering. Each step beyond the usual quitting point called forth a toughness he'd never accessed before. He doesn't recommend that you dive unprepared into extreme challenges, but he points out that many of us are so cautious that we never get a taste of how deep we can dig. Goggins calls this mental fortification callousing the mind. Just like a musician develops calluses on their fingers from hours of practice, or a construction worker's hands become rough from physical labor, your mind also toughens up the more you ask of it. But you have to consistently put it through trials. That might mean running an extra mile, studying when you'd rather watch TV, or waking up at 4 a.m. to work on your dream project. It's not about masochism. It's about training yourself to handle discomfort so life's unexpected difficulties don't unravel you. Goggins argues that society tends to shield us from pain and adversity, leaving many of us ill-prepared for the real tests that inevitably come our way. By immersing yourself in controlled bouts of suffering, you develop mental muscles that will hold you steady when larger storms roll in. Another principle Goggins emphasizes is the cookie jar, a mental technique to counteract negative self-talk. The cookie jar is where you store mental snapshots of your past accomplishments, moments you overcame obstacles, reached significant milestones, or proved your doubts wrong. When you hit a wall and your mind starts whispering that you're not good enough, you reach into that cookie jar. You remind yourself you've been through tough times before and made it out. This shift in perspective can help you keep going even when everything in you wants to stop. It's a simple but powerful reframe. Instead of telling yourself the story of your limitations, you reference the concrete evidence of your strengths. Goggins also discusses a concept he calls taking souls, which might sound combative, but is essentially the practice of surpassing the low expectations people have of you. He first tested it out in SEAL training. When instructors ramped up the pressure, aiming to break the spirits of recruits, Goggins used that negativity as a challenge to perform even better. By doing so, he often left his instructors surprised, and that astonishment fueled him to push harder. In a broader sense, taking souls applies whenever someone underestimates you. Rather than getting defensive or discouraged, you can use their doubt as rocket fuel. The idea isn't to be spiteful or prove them wrong out of malice. It's about showing yourself and them that you won't be defined by anyone else's narrative. As you follow Goggins' experiences, ranging from Hell Week to ultra-endurance runs and back again, you'll notice a theme of unflinching honesty. He doesn't sugarcoat his setbacks. He talks about the times he let himself down, including moments when he allowed negativity to spiral or when he made poor decisions that nearly derailed his ambitions. But he revisits these failures not to wallow, but to learn. That's a key takeaway. Being honest with yourself about your faults and mistakes is more productive than blaming circumstances. Goggins believes that once you accept full responsibility for your progress, you remove the power from external obstacles. Yes, the world may still be unfair, but by controlling your response, you reclaim the driver's seat of your life. One of the areas where Goggins had to apply that unflinching honesty was in tackling his own ego. After a series of accomplishments, from passing SEAL training to completing daunting ultramarathons, it would have been easy to coast on those achievements. Yet each success became a call for him to set his sights on something bigger. It's not that he was never satisfied, it's that he understood progress is a habit you maintain through constant effort. The moment you stop challenging yourself, you begin to regress. This principle can apply to any career or personal pursuit. You might have nailed one big presentation at work, but if you rest on that success, you'll stagnate. If, however, you keep asking, what's next, or how can I push myself further, you'll stay in a state of continuous growth. Goggins doesn't say that approach is painless, but he insists it leads to a more fulfilled, self-actualized life. While Goggins' feats might seem too extreme for everyday life, he makes it clear that the principles behind them can adapt to any goal. Whether you want to write a book, start a small business, or get in shape, the same mindset applies. First, you have to acknowledge what's holding you back: fear, laziness, or lack of knowledge. Next, you create a plan to address those weaknesses. Then you push through discomfort, physically or mentally, knowing that your mind is likely to try convincing you to quit long before you've reached your true limit. When setbacks occur, you dip into your cookie jar to remember you've succeeded in the face of difficulty before, which gives you proof you can do it again. Goggins also speaks about the lonely road that often accompanies extreme self-improvement. His decision to put in hours of running, swimming, or lifting often meant sacrificing social time. Friends and family couldn't always understand his drive. Some questioned why he worked so hard or why he chose to suffer voluntarily. Goggins recognized that forging a higher level of discipline sometimes requires walking a path where not everyone can follow. But he also found that true satisfaction came from pushing beyond what others assumed he could do. In his view, most people are so afraid of judgment or failure that they never explore their upper limits. Standing out can be uncomfortable, but it can also become a wellspring of pride, knowing you didn't settle for average because it was more socially palatable. His approach to adversity is grounded in a principle he calls, "The only way out is through." Avoiding difficulty won't make it disappear. It just delays the inevitable. Whether you're facing emotional trauma, physical challenges, or intellectual hurdles, Goggins insists the fastest route to growth is meeting that challenge head-on. He demonstrates this repeatedly throughout his life. For example, after completing several demanding military assignments, and he realized he still had certain insecurities related to his past. Instead of burying them, he confronted them with the same intensity he used for physical training, often through grueling introspection, therapy, and more personal accountability exercises. This willingness to address uncomfortable truths is what keeps him evolving. It's a powerful reminder that if you don't face your demons, they'll keep dragging you down from the shadows. Another element that threads through Can't Hurt Me is the importance of carving out your own path rather than relying on external validation. Goggins shares how fleeting and empty external praise can feel if you're not already proud of yourself. He's been recognized by major institutions and celebrated for his endurance events, but none of that matters as much as the satisfaction he gains from pushing himself to his own max. If you hitch your self-worth to trophies or social media likes, you'll always be at the mercy of other people's opinions. Goggins encourages focusing on internal benchmarks. Did you run the farthest you've ever run, challenge yourself more than ever before, or rise to a personal obstacle you once avoided? If so, that's a win, even if no one else is clapping. This shift to self-validation frees you from constant comparisons, letting you channel your energy into genuine self-improvement instead of chasing applause. All these lessons, accountability, the 40% rule, taking souls, callousing your mind, the cookie jar, lead to one overarching message. You have the power to redefine your limits one day at a time by consistently demanding more of yourself than you did yesterday. Goggins' story demonstrates that grit and discipline can be learned and honed no matter your background or past struggles. He doesn't promise it's easy. In fact, he reminds you over and over that the path is grueling and you may question your own sanity at times. But he also shows that the rewards, unshakable confidence, a profound sense of purpose, and a life that truly feels your own, are immeasurable. A recurring question in Can't Hurt Me is whether anyone can sustain this kind of discipline. Goggins acknowledges the toll it can take, both physically and mentally. He's suffered stress fractures, multiple surgeries, and countless personal sacrifices. Yet he sees each injury, each sacrifice, as part of an ongoing evolution rather than a reason to quit. When injuries forced him to slow down or pause, he attacked rehabilitation with the same intensity he brought to his training. His mindset didn't rely on continuous success. It thrived on continuous effort. In other words, setbacks can be integrated into the journey rather than viewed as signals you should throw in the towel. This is a crucial distinction. Mentally tough people aren't exempt from failure. They just don't interpret failure as an endpoint. For readers who aren't aspiring Navy SEALs or ultra-athletes, Goggins' lessons still apply. Maybe your equivalent of Hell Week is starting that business you've been dreaming of, tackling a demanding college program, or repairing a relationship you've let deteriorate. The mental fortitude he describes, embracing adversity rather than fleeing it, translates to any goal that requires sustained effort. The 40% rule can help you press on when you feel you've done enough. The accountability mirror can highlight the daily habits sabotaging your progress, and the cookie jar can remind you of past moments where you proved yourself capable of more than you believed. In the later parts of the book, Goggins addresses how this relentless drive for self-improvement shapes the rest of his life. Despite accomplishing feats that would satisfy most, he keeps pushing, not out of vanity, but out of a refusal to let complacency take root. Yet he's transparent about the cost. Relationships strain, the body breaks down, and there's a constant war with the temptation to ease off. He doesn't sugarcoat that cost, but he also doesn't apologize for it. In his eyes, living a life of excellence, and by that, he means doing everything you can to maximize your potential, is worth every bit of sweat and pain. This perspective might not resonate with everyone, and Goggins acknowledges that. Still, he maintains that if you genuinely want to see how far you can go, you have to be prepared to sacrifice some comfort, some approval, and a lot of short-term pleasures. Ultimately, Can't Hurt Me is an invitation. It asks you to consider where you've been playing it safe and what could happen if you pushed just a bit harder. Are you quitting early because your mind tells you you're spent, or have you really tested your limits? Do you distract yourself with comfortable routines rather than seeking out new challenges? Do you avoid your flaws because it's painful to face them, or are you willing to confront them and grow? These are uncomfortable questions, but Goggins poses them because he's seen how drastically one's life can change with the right mindset. He urges you to shift from "I can't" to "How can I?" and to treat each challenge as a stepping stone rather than a roadblock. If there's a unifying theme in Goggins' message, it's that transformation is a series of daily decisions. There's no magic pill that made him go from a frightened, overweight kid to an elite warrior and endurance athlete. It was the sum of 1,000 small choices to wake up early, to run when he was tired, to read and study when he'd rather relax, to confront negative thoughts head-on instead of letting them linger. Over time, those choices compounded. The same principle applies to you. Every day, you can decide to tackle something you dread, put in an extra bit of work, or test a new limit. It won't always yield immediate results, but you'll gradually reshape both your body and your mind into tools capable of handling more than you ever thought. You'll close Can't Hurt Me with a deeper understanding of how the mind can either imprison you or set you free. The key, as Goggins emphasizes repeatedly, is taking full ownership of your life story. You can't control your childhood, your genes, or unexpected tragedies, but you can control your response and the effort you put forth in shaping your future. In doing so, you replace helplessness with empowerment. Every run, Every study session, every awkward self-confrontation in the mirror is a step away from the version of you that let excuses and external circumstances define what was possible. Goggins' experiences teach that even the bleakest beginnings can transform into catalysts for extraordinary achievements if you harness them rather than run from them. His life might look extreme, but his philosophy boils down to a universal truth. Obstacles aren't walls, they're ladders, albeit painful ones at times. And with each climb, you discover that your limits are far more elastic than you ever dared to believe. That's the heart of Can't Hurt Me. You don't have to remain confined by who you think you are right now or by who the world says you are. You're free to dig deeper, push harder, and become the person you always suspected you could be. Thank you for watching. We provide complete and concise summaries of impactful books to save you time and help you effectively grasp their key insights.